Firstly, thanks, Rusty, Fletch. It's great to have you both online at the same time. Know how busy you both are. We're doing some stuff on coaching, coaching for the game of the future, coaching post-coronavirus. I think just to start us off and warm us up, Rusty, what does coaching mean to you?
Big question. Probably people, apologies if you've heard this before, this is probably where I am at the moment. Sure, it'll evolve. It definitely has evolved. It's definitely more individual than it ever was. So understanding what allows people to be their own version of Superman or Superwoman and maybe understand what makes them wobble. I think that's important. Probably understanding how I can get them to open the front door rather than breaking in round the back and stealing stuff from the basement. But how do we inspire? How do we get people to fall in love with stuff so they control their own development? And clearly we still challenge and support them. And then probably last would be probably probably more curious at the moment about the kind of the mental side of the game, and just did a podcast with Aaron Walsh, but I'm interested in stuff like belonging and identity. And I chatted earlier today, Fletcher nudged me towards Owen Eastwood, and he had a Wayne Smith quote, which I actually wrote down there. And he just said, if you want to build a team, it's a spiritual exercise. So I'm definitely starting to get more curious about what connects people up. So I've gone quite meta early on. I haven't mentioned the R word yet, though.
Well done. Like, you just before we took over to Fletch for the same question, just add a bit of context around the wobble. What makes you wobble?
Yeah, it's so stolen brazenly from Diane Lewis with England women's cricket, but they talk, what would make you wobble. So just starting to get to understand what might cause people to feel a little bit of pressure, and then how can we then help support them with that or replicate that. And so that really is quite a relatively gentle way of finding out a bit more about people, really.
Mm-hmm. Bit of stretch and bit of support.
Yeah.
Fletch, have you got anything to add? What does coaching mean to you, individual to you?
I don't have a huge amount to add. It's always tough to follow Rusty, kind of covers all bases. Definitely still see it as facilitating, see myself as a facilitator. People getting better. I agree with Rusty. It'll be obviously individual. I think more and more, as time goes by and the more experiences I have, the more individual I become. Clearly I work predominantly in a team sport. However, there's lots of other sports that we're also sort of working around, and it's about trying to find everybody's sweet spot. So you mentioned around challenge and support. I'm really curious around that type of stuff. So just have the appropriate challenge and support, but be really intentional about it. Sometimes one will outweigh the other one, but be sort of purposeful about that. So not quite as meta as Rusty.
Straight in there. I teed him up. But you both mentioned individual. So from a practical element and delivery element for all the coaches listening tonight, what kind of individual things are we thinking? What does that look like on the ground?
Well, I'll let Fletch answer first this time, because then I can pick up the scraps.
He can pick up the scraps. Yeah, I mean, I think the things we need to notice at the start is just noticing people doing some cool stuff, just being down to the nets with, a variety of people in terms of their experience and, sort of how effective they are at cricket at this moment in time, but just still notice the stuff that they're doing well and then apply some stretch. I think that's really useful. People are going to talk about getting to know people, and it's awesome that we're talking about it, but I still think it's really superficial. People think they know somebody because they know their mum's name or their dad's name, or I don't think it's, I don't think that's, clearly that stuff is useful and helpful, but I think it's more than that. I still think we need to have more conversations about the person than the player. Still, if there was a bit of ratio on it, it would be higher around the player. I hear a lot of noise around what the boys or girls can or can't do within the tactical stuff, and probably not enough about them as individuals. So maybe just have some rules about what you talk about first, how much you talk about stuff about the person. Go on, Rusty, pick up the scraps.
I wrote before, during, after, detail. Probably co-creating stuff so you get to understand what's meaningful for them. how do people show up? So I love the fact that if you're about to fly an RAF fighter jet, they ask how you feel, and if you feel like not so well, then you don't fly the fighter jet. So I think we've got to check people as they turn up. I was chatting this morning to Elliot Massingham, who's a football coach, and we were talking a bit about the whiteboard at the start of training with challenges on, and I quite like the idea of having a Nando's whiteboard. So do you want to try, lemon and herb, quite spicy or really spicy? And you can play around with stuff on that. Checking in with co-coaches on how are we going to be intentional so that Rusty doesn't miss out on the kids that are struggling and spends all his time hanging out with the kids he thinks are like him. And then for me, during, it's how good's our practice design? Because if it's not that good, then we won't have good interactions, would be my view. So it needs to stretch and challenge. And then afterwards, probably just or during really, get some feedback around what's impactful, what's useful for people, what was the most impactful moment you had with a coach, with a peer. I would definitely scaffold in some of the peer-to-peer stuff. And then, and again, just get feedback on stuff so that we can create a better session next time round.
Good stuff. Try not to be too modest. Both of you, Stu and I will jump in and we'll add some layers to it. But where did your coaching career start, and what was the evolution? What did coaching look like when you first started, whereabouts, and what does it look like now?
Go on, Rusty, you're in full floor, mate.
Not really. It started when Peter Muller got sacked at Doncaster, quite frankly. So, and then a group of us took over coaching. So I didn't really have an idea of what it was going to be till that point. And I was a player coach, and that's a difficult thing to navigate. I think it was probably the hardest bit was stop being a player coach and then stopping coaching and stopping playing, and then understanding how you can influence and affect other people when you're not on the pitch. And it's been a long, arduous journey that I'm still on. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I would look back on stuff. I've got videos of 6 months ago and I don't want to share them. I'm dying. I guess you're constantly getting better. That would be it for me, really. I've been lucky to have some good people around me. So Fletch, Waltz, Kevin Bowering, Nigel Redman. I've had some pretty cool people that I've met in my life that have been really helpful. And yeah, lots of different experiences, coached boys, girls, different sports, men, women, performance, development, if we're going to call it that. Probably same as Fletch. I'm thankful that I've had lots and lots of different experiences across lots of sports, none of them beginning with R.
Rowing.
I did London Youth Rowing, so I've done that. I've done R, I've done rowing.
Nice, good work.
Class, Fletch.
It's similar. I think lots of people know this. So I'm one of the lucky ones. I just had a really positive experience when I was a kid. So I just had people who used to turn up and sort of look to support us a bit. Probably wouldn't be classified as coaches. So I was always afforded the opportunity to, as a young person, to co-create, self-organise. So do all of that sort of stuff. I've been doing that even at school. The school teachers were sort of looking back. They were way ahead of their time. So shout out to Hayden Birch High School, Allendale Middle School. My coaching started around 23, so I had quite a nasty injury. I snapped my leg, and I was out for nearly 2 years because I then came back and ruptured my groin. So I had a series of injuries, and the game had just gone professional. So I remember thinking, well, if they're going to pay professional players, they're probably going to need some professional coaches. So I then became really intentional around my coaching. And same as Rusty, just every night of the week, coaching in every environment. There wouldn't be any environment that I haven't coached in. Boys, girls, every age group, every form of rugby, lots of different environments. Nobody noticed. I was the first one to say the
I know you was. I was just waiting.
So lots of different environments, and then fortunate to get some opportunities in Newcastle Falcons through the academy into the first team. And then I've been with England for like 10 years around their performance program, around their under 18s. So that's my story. It's not that exciting. Same as Rusty. I mean, if you look back, yeah, there'd be some stuff I wouldn't be that proud of. However, there'd be lots of stuff I would be really proud of, because before I knew lots of stuff, I think I was doing all right, to be fair.
Thanks very much, Fletch. I think what we'll do is we'll pick the bones out of this in just a second. Can you start with the current situation at the moment with COVID and how you think we're going to cope with coming out of COVID and what coaching is going to look like in the near future?
Yeah, Ken, are you alright if I share something? I've actually been leaving on me and Rusty prepared a couple of slides. It's not like us.
It's a full presentation, you did.
Just we've only got pictures on, which is a bit more like us. So I'm just going
go for it.
Duffs, I've got a message back. It says, "Let me have a think. Who is Jason Duffy?"
Ouch.
You'll know.
Right. So around the post-COVID, this is the stuff that I think is going to be important. The top length, I think, is going to be the most important. So cricket's about to start at Tynedale Cricket Club. I'm the junior chairman. So last night we had some planning stuff and we got loads of cool stuff. But fundamentally, it's around just reconnecting, everybody to reconnect. So the top left is around and nudged around. Let's not get straight in back to like sort of passy type stuff. Clearly, we can't do some of the other stuff within our sport around the R word. But so connect's really strong. I think that's going to be important post-COVID. Then the next right, not necessarily in order, but Rusty, do you want to share the stuff we've been doing around, place? And you're actually speaking to him. Oh, no, that's Dan Hughes, not Damien Hughes. Go on, mate.
It's probably the behaviours of the adults in really good learning environments. So playful, loving, accepting, curious, empathetic. I think we might have to dial up some of that stuff when people come back. As you as well, Fletch, like being a father and seeing what kids are experiencing at the moment. You said your son went back today, was pretty excited. There'll be some kids that are stressed about going back. Some kids have been stressed at the moment, so understanding and seeking to understand as opposed to judging would be useful to think about as well. So yeah, just be more aware of the adult behaviours, quite frankly.
And that's why I put the sort of the Superman and woman there around again. Just notice the stuff that and it's not about starting again. Clearly, we've got some information, huge amounts of information, but it's actually been quite a long time. And quite a lot of stuff's happened, especially if you're dealing with teams around or individuals around maturation. So let's actually start noticing some stuff that's really good and cool. Let's get them some success. Let's get them excited about their experience. Don't be picking up the stuff that they're not doing well, or maybe they haven't trained as hard, or whatever it may be. So I think that's going to be really important. Give people a really positive experience. Often that will be around just stuff going well for them. So notice that. And then it's around just a bit around our practice design stuff. We're clearly going to have to get smart. Rusty, do you want to explain why people are not in a swimming pool yet? They've got the swimming noodles.
Yeah, I mean, these kids here are obviously playing like a version of a sport, different areas, so people can go to different areas that would get around some of the social distancing stuff, as would using a woggle as a way of tackling someone. So they're smiling way too much for my liking. But once again, just thinking of probably creative ways we can play sport, and quite frankly, I think lots of the sports will look quite similar. Most of the invasion games will, because we won't be able to tackle. So maybe having some zones. I know we're going to speak about gamification, but definitely some stuff around levels and that's some people that are back at the moment. Just quickly on that, actually, we set up a group and we got the New Zealand schools coaches to come on and speak to us about their experiences. One of the things that I really liked was how they divided the kids up into like groups of 5 or 6. So they did it kind of during lockdown and also now. And one of the functions of that group is to just keep checking in with each other. So as opposed to us thinking it's just us, and actually if you put in each of those groups probably a really good role model and someone who will check in, then it's a good way to kind of keep on top of everyone. And they've had over there some kids that have really struggled during lockdown, and that's been pretty vital for them.
Just a shout out to the cricket match I've just witnessed, actually. So 5 players, so a bowler, batter, that's 2, a net for wicketkeeper, because you don't really need one. The other guys fielded, but they fielded with tennis rackets, so they didn't touch the ball. So there was loads of catches because it's actually you can jump higher with a tennis racket or you could dive. They were down around and if it touches a tennis racket, it was out. They had to pass the ball to each other with the tennis racket. So it was just a cool game. I'm a bit frustrated that I didn't think of it. It was thought by somebody else. But yeah, I think we're going to get really creative. And clearly, as Rusty said early on, let's get the kids to support us and co-create some really good environments based upon the constraints we have around the rules and regulations. And the one on the left is just around our practice design. We've still got to continue to keep it non-linear. It's got to be, you know, I mean, I do have one drama. I went down the rugby club a couple of nights ago and they were basically passing the ball in fours, running along the line. I was thinking, come on, I think we can do some other stuff. I actually let my dog loose on purpose because it chases the ball just to add some constraints. But hey ho, mate, do you want me to go on? I mean, that's our sort of
yes, please. Yes, please, Fletch. You
COVID, mate, and
get your woggles before they sell out. They're going to be like clickers.
Oh, yeah, I've got my. Where's I've got my woggles. I got loads of them, to be honest. If anybody wants any, the Fletcher house, I've got a lot.
Yes, me wobbles.
So this is sort of stuff around coaching in the future. So this is just so the words on the top left hand side is the stuff that the really clever people are telling us. World Economic Forum, lots of universities are sort of saying, look, well, these are the skills that are going to be useful when the young people leave school. So cognitive flexibility, digital literacy, etc., etc. So I think understanding what's going to be useful for them, not only in their whatever they're doing within this activity, but actually what are the skills that are also going to be useful. One of the things I love about you, Duffs, and there's lots of things I love about you, mate, but it would be the stuff that you're doing around the higher order skills. So you've elevated some stuff stuff around the goal skills, so the determination, originality, leadership, and determination, growth and determination. That stuff's really important. So I think it would be useful.
Can I just shout that there's a real sort of balance, isn't there, about getting these sort of higher order skills and having some confidence to take away with it. What are your thoughts? I asked a question. I was going to ask you a question tonight around priorities in session design. So where would these lie in terms of your coaching plan?
I mean, right at the top, mate. To be honest, they'd be up there with principles. Rusty, what's your go on, mate?
I mean, that's not true. You'd have detail above this.
I know the technical stuff first.
I actually chatted to Owen Eastwood today, and he came over from New Zealand, and he said his son was playing a rugby match for Stowe on the Wold, and it was half time, and it was one try all. It was like under 12s, under 13s, and he watched the two half times. First time his son had ever played, and opposition coach stood in the middle shouting, dragged some kids off, all that kind of standard Sunday morning ridiculousness going on, and then the vets were all kind of like some problems themselves, he said, and some of the kids that looked like they would be perhaps like the alpha kids are actually involving other kids, and he was blown away. And so he said he actually rang Wayne Smith afterwards to tell him. He was so impressed. And anyway, he went over to the coach in the clubhouse. He said, so why did that happen at half time? He said, well, at the start of the season, we asked the kids what they wanted to get out of the season. And one of the things they said was, we want to be really good problem solvers. So we agreed some stuff that we would do. And he said it was like the big derby, the big, under 12 derby. And the coach said, and we knew that if we intervened in that game, then we would just lose their trust. And so I think it's some stuff we could be doing now actually with the kids, is to go, look, what do you want to get out of next season? And let's go, let's talk, maybe it's friendship, maybe whatever it might be, and we can co-create stuff with the kids around that. So that's exactly what they did. Kids said we want to be good problem solvers. They agreed some stuff.
Rusty, you both mentioned the word facilitator at the very start of this rolling. I think the kids can only discuss things like that if we allow them to, if the facilitator allows them to. If the facilitator says, what do you want to get better at this season? What do you want to focus on? Tackling, rucking, passing, tell us what you want to do. I think the facilitator has to get a bit smarter.
Yeah, I didn't say facilitate, Fletch did, but I was, and we might need to help them. So if, for example, there is, 2 or 3 kids that aren't that helpful in the huddle, and speaking not that well to other kids, or they're hogging it, or people don't know what to do, then we can definitely scaffold that and talk about, well, what would a really good huddle look like before, during, after. And yeah, we can also help them. We could facilitate some of that stuff as well. And yeah, I mean, that would be cool, wouldn't it? Like, maybe my thought experiment is like, if the kids were going to run training, you know, if you had 1 week to help the kids run training for the rest of the season, what would you do? And we'd probably scaffold some of this stuff pretty quickly and help them with it.
Yeah, mate. And look, the last one is just bottom left. Again, Rusty's mentioned around the mental health, mental well-being. I think coaches are going to have to certainly have better awareness around that, and also have some skills around it, some strategies around it, just to be checking in with people. Young people have much more awareness of themselves and awareness of mental health for a number of reasons, which we're going to sort of share in a minute, actually. The other stuff is just around the generation.
Can I just tag on? Because I'm replaying Simone Eastwood stuff there. He said we often speak a lot. We speak a lot about mental and physical well-being. We don't speak enough about social well-being. So once again, how do kids feel connected? So classic ways they don't in rugby is, I'm the kid that sits on the bench. I'm the kid the coach never speaks to. I'm the bin juice, as they call it in the Premiership.
And it mentions that, doesn't it? Emotional and social intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the stuff that's going to be important. So that's the stuff we probably should be affording them or supporting them around. Or, you know, the Generation Z. So some stuff we know about. Obviously, it's a generalisation, but we have quite a bit of information around the stuff that they like, what their preference around learning, certainly the digital stuff. And again, on the previous page, it spoke about, sort of the sort of digital, what was this, how to reference, digital literacy. So people being, I mean, my kids are just amazing on their phones. It's just, I mean, the 12-year-old comes and sets all my stuff up and gives me information, fixes my computer. So yeah, I think that would be useful as well. So coaches in the future are going to have to be more aware of the people who are in front of them, and the digital stuff. And Stu's probably got some stuff later on around the digital stuff, but it's absolutely vital. I mean, if you want to connect with young people, then you've got to be better understand their world a bit. I don't think enough people do. I mean, you just got to go into a club, any sports club, and it's probably still set out for like the 90s, even prior to my time. So the sports club that I'm involved in the most is like, I don't think it's changed that much since I was a kid. It's been painted, but I just don't think it's that friendly for young people. Actually, they get told to stop running around. I mean, seriously, they're kids. Of course they want to run around. Rusty, go on. This is yours, although this might take the rest of the webinar.
It won't. So if I said to you, you know, I've got some stuff in training that'll help you with all that stuff there. Oh, strong donuts, nice. Then you would take it, I would imagine. And clearly it's something we've both been exploring a lot. So Amy Price's work around video game design, called Gamification by me, I know illegally, but it's probably changed my coaching significantly. I've actually reached out to a guy called James G, who's the guy she got the original work from. If I can recommend anyone to go online, there's a document called Good Learning by James G. Really easy to read, really cool piece of work for coaches. And so what I do think is, as we play a sport beginning with R and we can't do contact, and we might, then let's up some cognitive stuff and get people thinking and problem solving and getting used to pausing and all the stuff that'll be useful for them. I'm happy. There's been plenty of this stuff online. Maybe listen to the Amy Price pod, or reach out to me or Amy or Fletcher, or check out James G as well.
Yeah, I made nothing to add other than if anybody's curious around buying the cards, it would probably help.
A good one for me would be, so if we're going back and we're doing individual stuff, and I saw someone, I think someone asked about cricket, then actually very simply having some different levels that people can work through is a good way to start to think about mastery. and then helping getting them to co-create it so they own training and so much more stuff around choice. So real simple stuff that can make a big difference, especially when we're going back to probably more smaller group stuff.
I'm not blowing smoke on my own backside, but I'm smashing it around the gamification in the nets.
Why? What's the best? What would a John Fletcher net session look like?
Well, just what sort of stuff do you want to work on? What sort of stuff have you noticed about other people? Let's actually design some, and it doesn't take long. Just have a whiteboard and a pen, right? What's the sort of stuff, right? So this is kind of the mission. So this is the stuff we want to kind of get out of it. These are intentions, right? So, how do you want to score stuff? So what did we play the other game? So we basically played sort of they want to do some stuff around the, like a 20-20 type game or a short over game. So they basically had to hit 2 4s out of 6 balls type stuff. And they got bonus points if they hit them after each other. There's some consequences if they didn't. It was a scoring system based around their kind of effectiveness or ability. So it was actually a different scoring system. Mate, was class. We were there an hour and a half. We just got to level 2, just got through level 2 in an hour and a half. It was a strong session. There was some, and there was some stuff going around their psychological stuff with teenage boys. They were finding it quite difficult.
So let's just say you're designing, for sake of argument, a 1 hour session. What is the one thing in your session, regardless of the sport? What is the one thing that's absolutely non-negotiable? The thing that you must see and achieve within that one session?
Are we talking gamification, or are we generally just talking coaching?
Generally, now.
I mean, mine would, I think Rusty will probably say the same, but if you're talking about the coaching skills, and actually Rusty corrected me the other day, because I didn't mention this one, it's just around noticing. So actually have a bit of a plan around some of the stuff that you might see. So Ed Hall would talk a lot about this. Jamie Williams would talk a fair amount about it as well, around that. We do a lot of planning around moving from A to B to C. And we actually need to do more planning around some interactions with some individuals. So mine would be around just giving some thought around some stuff that you might see with some individuals around noticing.
Is that purely because the individual comes away feeling valued, that the coach doing the session has had that it doesn't matter how long for, that little bit of interaction?
Yeah, I think that certainly what I'm hearing, and when we get the kids in at the end, right, especially when there's coaches there, right, guys, you've got an opportunity to give some information to coaches. What do you want from coaches? Bar none, they'll say some individual support. I want to feel coached. So I get there's other stuff going on, but I want something for me, that type of stuff. They would also add, I want some stuff that I can choose. But Rusty, what's yours, mate?
I wrote 2 down, obviously. Choice, so probably ties in with the co-creation stuff, but trying to find out what's meaningful to them. Clearly, I also have the ability as a coach to stretch that and move it and nudge it and help them with that. And then probably curiosity around, probably slightly different to people who coach in the same environment all the time, but I've got to get to know people really quickly and find out, what feedback's impactful for you. What one thing could you tell me that would help me coach you better? What does everyone think Fletcher's super strength is? Actually, I'm going 3 things. Peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer feedback.
Yeah, mate, there's some really good stuff there. Just talk to me around sort of the practicalities. So Stu, when you're coaching the first team, you've got a couple of coaches with you. When the coaches who are online now, it's all about co-coaching. So when you're talking about peer-to-peer, noticing, and you're noticing stuff and preempting stuff because you know the people you're working with, what's the sort of, secret to success around co-coaching? Rusty, have you got any tips on co-coaching?
I'll steal a Danny Newcombe phrase. Have your arguments before the session. Just probably have some intention, and also include within that like stuff you're working on as coaches. So far too often we're thinking about the players getting better, but actually how can we support one another getting better? So Fletcher, it'd be cool if you could keep an eye out on how many interactions I have with these 2 or 3 kids that I think are a little bit different to me. And then just checking in during, so not having a rigid plan and being able to kind of adapt and do stuff. And I do think it takes time, because when me and Fletcher coached last year and he'll start smiling any second now. When me and Fletcher coached last year he's disappeared. When we coached together at Bedford last year, we hadn't coached together for about 4 or 5 months, and it was terrible, wasn't it, Fletch? Our co-coaching at Bedford. I actually had to go and stand on the side of the pitch because Fletcher's doing it.
Yeah, we were both doing each other's head-ins. I mean, we hadn't done a huge amount of prep around it, but it was awkward. It was awkward. I felt uncomfortable about it. Apologies. I lost my Wi-Fi for a bit. I do apologise. There is one last slide. Do you want to see it, or do you just want to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Sorry about that, gang. Northeast Wi-Fi. So it was just around this. So coaching in the future, I think, is going to be around just getting people a bit more excited about stuff, theming it, telling some stories, having lots of stuff that's sort of weaved in and linked in type stuff. I think there's some environment. So Sarah Keller around hockey is killing it. She does it as well as anybody I've ever seen. Falcons did some real cool stuff last year around some of the stuff that they were doing around Call of Duty and some stuff around the games. And then just generally, I would go and sort of look up some storytelling stuff. Real strong connection to good coaching and good leadership around ability to tell stories.
I just saw Andy Abrahams on here. I was speaking to a coach earlier today in Ireland, and another coach, they'd had a theme. Basically, it was a girls' team, and the band that they wanted to theme their season around was Queen, which is awesome because I love all Queen's music. So it just became part of everything they did. So I think their defence was Another One Bites the Dust. And this time, all these songs, and they had different, like they had a Freddie Mercury award, and I'm all in. Like, stuff like that gets me excited, and I'm not even part of that team.
Junior rugby pitches with built-in PA systems now.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Just talking again about session design, just give us a little bit around technical skills of the future. So, we've talked a lot about coaches in terms of design and what we're looking for to create in our sessions. But from a technical standpoint, and the R word, the R sport, what are we looking for? What do you think is going to be the real key skills of the future that we don't see or use as much now?
What do you mean by technical skills? And apology, I'm not being pedantic.
I'm thinking about an execution skills. So is it offloads? Is it defense? Is it the tackle? Is it the choke tackle? Is it kicking? Where do we think we need to get better at to develop for the game in the future?
Yeah, I mean, Russel definitely fill in the gaps. I do think the focus should be around adaptability, just working really hard. I always had that in my head, back of my head was around. So people say, what sort of stuff, why are you designing your practice like this? What's ultimately what you're aiming for? I just want the most adaptable players and the most adaptable team. So that's clearly going to, that's clearly going to nudge my sort of thinking around how I'm designing stuff, conversations I'm having, what we're doing on and off the pitch type stuff. I do think within our sport, so I'm going to say rugby, so I'm happy to sing a song. I just think it's ridiculous to keep on saying the R word. So within rugby, I do think it's around the low numbers, and I understand and appreciate they have quite a lot of bit stuff going on around the set piece. But over 50% of the team often is not that skillful or not being afforded an opportunity to be skillful. Like we keep on passing the ball, like in front of them, behind them, around them. Like, why aren't we just giving them an opportunity to be a bit more skillful? Especially when they're younger. I've coached some amazing young, skillful low numbers who maybe aren't then allowed to do some stuff in the game. So that's what it would be for me.
Just before I go to you, Rusty, just before Stu, your first 15 forwards coach, we've got some incredibly skillful forwards. What's your, sorry for putting you on the spot, but what's your secret with Knox and those boys?
I just think, good question, and we've looked at this again. I think obviously we've got a lot of time with them here, but I think we just play a lot of games. We play a lot of games in the summer, in free time. We're just out there playing modified games, rules. Sometimes we're not even there in their own social time. they're not playing Xbox. They're out there chucking a ball around, and I just think, that it just comes second nature to them, and that's why we have big prop forwards that can pass off both hands, and very skillful lads. So yeah, and it's a good question. I've asked that again to Simon, but yeah, I think it's the time that they've got a ball in their hand. It's just the fun sessions that they've had, not just in the season but off season as well.
Yeah,
I think that's a good one. I would, and I do think Sedbergh are breaking the rules. I have noticed in the schoolboy game that it is. I do think the backs have increased their skill level. I don't actually think the low numbers have that much. So they might be seen in training. I haven't seen that many games. Sedbergh would be one of the teams where the forwards actually allowed to touch the ball. I would say schoolboy rugby. Generally, I think the standard has improved, but I actually don't think the low number skill has that much.
Yeah, some stuff. I mean, the weekend was probably a good example of where the game's going. Fair play, 4 teams that hadn't played a game in 3 months and had trained for 3 weeks. I spoke to someone who'd spoken with Chiefs, and they hadn't done any shape. They'd basically come back and said to the players, we're going to have an awesome 3 weeks, going to enjoy it, and we're going to see how it works out on the pitch, which I thought was pretty cool. And very un-Warren Gatland. I've had loads of coaches message me going, awesome, love the new rules, can't wait, really got me thinking about how I coach. So John Fisher would be a really good example. I've had some coaches going, oh my God, the rules are terrible, how are we going to coach? So it's interesting, isn't it? The stuff that I noticed, and some people have put some stuff in there, but your decision making at the breakdown, your ability to effectively clear with one person, so one bullet, passing the ball off the floor. In the World Cup final, I know Aidan did that thing, something like 9 England players played 9 in the first 40 minutes or something ridiculous. That's going to be really normal. Kicking, so a couple of good kicks that led to scores at the weekend. Adaptability, as Fletcher said. But the thing that I'd never really thought about is they didn't have time to get into shape. So all the coaches that are addicted to shape, well, the rucks were so quick at the weekend. So people were actually really struggling. So either they make everyone really fit, or they focus a bit more on off the ball and people's awareness and ability to go into different positions. So as an example, the current format we have of, some forward pods and some backs out, they didn't get that many opportunities to get into that type of shape. They had to just play. So I think we're going to have to come to terms with that as coaches. We're going to have to let go a little bit.
What do you mean by shape, mate? Some people might not.
I don't know. I've just heard people saying it. So
shout it, that's fine.
I think you call it organised support. So for me, it's about support. I get it, and that you might want some people to stand in some positions, but I can never guarantee where the defence are going to be. So that might vary depending upon the picture in front of me. And I also get, and depend upon where we're all coaching, but at a performance end, you might say, Dan Cole, I don't want you at first receiver that often. So you wouldn't want Dan Cole at first receiver 40 times a game. However, if Dan Cole was under 12 and he had the skill set of Dan Cole, and I feel like I'm picking on Dan Cole now, then you might want him playing first receiver with support of you as the coach and his peers, helping people get better. So,
mate, Dan Cole was a back row forward. Dan Cole, believe it or not, and I know there's some physical adaptations that have happened and a little bit of wear and tear. But as a young fella, he was a pretty skillful back row forward. But yeah, I mean, I definitely get it. I'm not completely stupid.
And Rusty, what you said there is great, because it's going to breed more creativity and less formulaic. It's going to be great. Where therefore does technology come in? Because I've been at rugby clubs and they're obsessed with not just filming the games, which we know is important, but filming the sessions and then sitting down and then poring over the footage of the sessions as well. If we're being that creative, then it can't surely be that formulaic. So sorry, it's a long-winded question. Where do you see kind of video technology sitting in sport?
Fletcher, you're better at this than me.
I think it's vital. Again, look at the Generation Z stuff in terms of, what their preferences is around taking information. It would be video, it would be pictures. So companies such as Coach Logic, and we do a bit, and they're actually supporting things such as this, companies such as Coach Logic, you know, are going to be at the forefront of also part of the learning environment. There's never going to be I'll never say never. Certainly short term, it's always going to be about being on the grass as well. But you can't be on the grass for forever. So the digital stuff is going to be really important. How we're sharing information around the phones and the computers and the laptops. Actually, the game's probably moved back a little bit from the GPS. It was a bit sort of dominated by it some time ago. I think what we've got now is people who better understand the information and probably better at saying, well, not all of this information is going to be that helpful, and better understanding the unintended consequences. So Will Greenwood, as an example, will tell you when he had your GPS on, when the whistle went, he basically just did shuttle runs. And then he was top with it, because that's actually so be mindful about what you measure. So the GPS in itself is a perfectly helpful tool in lots of ways. But just be mindful of what you measure, because people will adapt their behaviour based on what you measure.
Yeah, I'll just jump on that a little bit. And I'm with you that you're definitely going to, I mean, it's the perception part of, and then you'll get on the pitch and do the action.
And you're doing perception. Coupling, stop it. Just be mindful of unintended consequences. So I'll give you two examples that I've seen. One is an international team doing line-outs, and then 8 seconds later they get the video. They become reliant upon the 8 seconds later for feedback, rather than giving each other feedback in the moment. Spoke to a Super Rugby coach recently. He had a South African international. They lost the game by 40 points. The first thing he did was go over to the GPS guy and find out what his GPS was. He's like, that's the least of our concerns. But because they put such significance on the GPS, and probably the best example I've seen, and it's Fletcher's going to get excited because I'm going to talk about Jonesy. So the S&C coach for Japan at the World Cup delivered on a webinar recently, and he said, we measured two things. So we measured ball in play. So we wanted to get above 40 minutes in a game, because we knew that if we had that intensity, we would win games. So that influenced our training. So we would look at trying to replicate that in training. The other thing they looked at, because you'll get like data around kind of sprints or accelerations, and they looked at how many of the accelerations were high speed ones. So when I was working to accelerate, was I working hard? And for that group of players, they said, look, people need to get from A to B to perform actions, and we wanted them to get there as quickly as they could. So still would have some unintended consequences, but only two pieces of data that they looked at with the players, and it fitted in around how they wanted to play the game. What I see with GPS is, and you know, you get about 65 pages worth of data with one unit, is people are lost by the data, and actually it's not making them better at rugby. Rusty, did I ever hear you talk about sharks and ice cream, and is it relevant, or is that not? I can't remember what your story was around people getting attacked by sharks. And is it relevant or not?
What are you talking about?
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I remember you telling the story around sharks and ice creams, but maybe it's got nothing to do with data.
I have no idea. I can't remember the story, but it sounds like it was cool.
Can I just add to your question as well? I think the Generation Z thing, and if you flip it from performance rugby, if that's what you want to call it, to sort of community stuff where they are using cameras to video the games, the kids are often great at just watching it themselves and reflecting on it themselves. That dictatorial view of someone stood at the front of a classroom and hitting the screen is becoming habitual, and you'll see it doing in boarding life at Sedbergh, where kids are sometimes on the phone, iPads, desktops, laptops, but they're interacting with their mates, talking about performance. I think that informal learning is really important. We should leave them be to get on with that themselves.
No, absolutely, and send them a link to the game and say, right, you tell us your 3 strengths, your 3 weaknesses, that kind of thing. Yeah, they come to that conclusion themselves. Absolutely, very, very important. But yeah, I'm absolutely with you. The GPS.
Can I just? Sorry to
don't worry.
And I would build on that as well. And you do need to be mindful that actually individuals all looking at something individually. I mean, that's why the sort of one-to-one meeting sometimes used to drive me insane a bit, because it's obviously a team sport. You want to try and create some and Andrew's sort of talking a little bit about around the shared mental models, but you definitely also want to create some environments where collectively, and I don't think England seniors do this well, Eddie will do it. So in the informal areas, they've actually cut down on the number of laptops on purpose. So they started with pretty much one each. It went to one every two. Now it's like one every 3 or 4 on purpose. So they can get more groups having some more conversations and put it in environments where people are just going to be looking at it type stuff. So that's the stuff I'm thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, it's getting. It doesn't matter what team you've got. They've got to work together, haven't they? I mean, you can have the best individuals in the world if they don't play for one another, it doesn't work. And you look at the British Army. We've got one of the best armies in the world. They work in small platoons, and when they're stuck in conflict, they're not fighting for Queen and country or anything like that. They're fighting purely for the 7 or 8 men right in front of them, and that's why they're so close. What do you think is the most important thing within a club or within a team to get that real strong unity, Rusty?
I would go back to probably identity and thinking about what got us here, what's our story, how can we connect what are we connected to? I do think it's quite spiritual. I think clearly there'll be some teams that have done it well, and look at some of the stuff Phil Jackson did with the Chicago Bulls, yeah.
Bulls, yeah.
Around that, and how he looked at people's ancestry and connected all that stuff up. I do think that's where it all starts from, if I'm honest. And then I actually think that's what Eddie did with England, really. It went back to what does it mean to be English and how do we play the game, and start to connect people up to that pretty well. And I noticed what Andrew's put really around coherence. I mean, I speak to players in the Premiership who catch the ball in training and 3 coaches shout out 3 different things. So that's confusing. So I do think just designing training so that people have problems to solve collectively, and also be mindful of like the ball out of play. So actually that's a great opportunity for us to be problem solving, and what are we doing then? And then the other thing is just coherence amongst the coaches, cohesion of message. So once again, I speak to lots of lads who go, this coach says this coach says this. I'm really confused by it. There'll be some clubs, and probably, I live in Bristol. Bristol's a good example where to be fair, big Pat Lamb, like Pat's like, this is how we're playing the game, and there's no grey area at all, really. So you could do it that way. You might want to co-create it, and clearly stuff's more powerful when people realise it for themselves. My preference would be this end, but it's knowing your group, isn't it?
Well, I suppose if they've got if he's got a group of lads that put all the trust in Pat, then it could easily work. Just like
I would just sorry, Stuart. I would just add some, and I was actually reading it out of the Diane Lewis sent some stuff around the female game in cricket, just around memories and moments. I think let's try and create some awesome experiences. So sort of think of the 2 M's. M&M's, I'm now calling it. So let's quote some memories and moments. So things such as maybe helpful things like don't go on tour at the end of the season, go on at the start of the season. I mean, how many people say, oh, this was amazing, this is the best time, this is why I love doing stuff. And then you have like a 4-month gap. So we've actually started going we've been at the start. I think it makes a huge difference to the rest of the season, because you just create those magical connections and stuff happens, but inevitably there's going to be stuff happens that people remember, and they're fond of it, it's funny, it's silly, it's all of that type of stuff. So, and then also again, just do some stuff, have a good rhythm to your year around getting people outside of the rugby stuff, but like excited about stuff, and it's not just 10-pin bowling or what we do is we go for swim in the North Sea in the winter type stuff. It's that some stuff that only we do. We do it together, and we create these amazing memories type stuff. So
do you go in?
No. Yeah, I do.
It's great.
I go up to below the midpoint. It's freezing, mate. It's the North Sea. The kids are fine. Obviously we make them, and no, of course we don't. I'm only teasing.
Can I ask you a quick question on the panel? It's a kind of a topical question, so be thoughtful with your answer. Has the impact of Black Lives Matter made you reflect on your coaching practice or sport generally, Rusty?
It's got me agitated, like looking at all those idiots fighting with each other. I think it's probably made me realise even more. I mean, look, I would always go back to sports about joy and connection and people finding out about themselves, and sport just happens to be the vehicle. I've gone meta again, but there'll be some people that have had some tough times in lockdown, and there's people who just have tough times anyway. And we're, people would actually, it was interesting, people would look at England 18s and think it's lots of posh public school boys, but some of the stories of some of the kids is like, wow, like mind-blowing. And you stay connected with those people, and sometimes you would feel like a bit of a father figure, and I think that's the power of sport. So yeah, it probably just makes you realise that we can shape people's lives. So I love the book, The Other Wesmore. I recommend it to anyone. Two guys called Wesmore, born in single-parent families, same 100 yards away. One ends up being a Rhodes Scholar, writes speeches for Barack Obama. Another guy ends up in prison for shooting a policeman. And it's just people they met along the way and choices they made, but people could have helped them. And I do think that's our job as coaches. So it's probably, I guess makes me more mindful of that. However, it's been doing my head in.
Anything to add, Fletch?
No, I know a lot to add. It's maybe quite sad, if I'm honest. I mean, I think living up in the boonies in the northeast, in Northumberland, you become a little bit sheltered from maybe some stuff. So I haven't enjoyed seeing some of it. Has it changed me? No, I don't think so. If I'm perfectly honest, it's just built my awareness that there's some people who are just not like me at all. So.
And obviously, ditto. I live in the Fells, and myself and my family, my girls are sheltered. It's disappointing, upsetting, and shameful. Turning on the news at the moment, but anyway.
I do think sport, however, just to add to that, I do think sport is, can do even more, in terms of just generally growing awareness, just creating even more amazing environments for anybody who wants to participate.
Right. And it's such a shame that the Olympics have been delayed, because the power of the Olympics, bringing those nations together, bringing the athletes together, the stories that we get every 4 years from the amazing the Summer Olympics anyway, are incredible. So yeah, bring back the fixtures. Jason, anything from you?
Yeah, just one last question. We've had loads of messages on the web chat, which would be good. We might just stay on for an extra couple of minutes just to talk through at the end. But just a big one in terms of coaching for you guys. Who's been your biggest influence and why in your coaching career? Rusty, do you want to start? Have you got someone in mind?
Lots of people. The kid that told me it's the worst session he ever did. Marcus Smith, when he told me I needed to give him more feedback in the moment. My son, when I'm trying to help him get better at table tennis, and he's just not having it, and I've got to think about, I haven't quite worked out how to coach him yet. Matt Turner, England Sevens, like, how'd you tame Matt? How'd you get the best out of him all the time? Probably those people alongside lots of the other people I mentioned, so Kevin Bowering, Fletch, Nigel Redman, Peter Walton showed me that, you can be a slightly different version of forwards coaches to the one that people expect. Tom Hartley, who's on here, just people all the time, really, to be honest, like everyone.
It's a good message. Fletch?
Yeah, similar, really. I mean, you just learn along the way. I think Steve Black had a big influence on me. So Blackie, for those who are from the Northeast, would probably have an awareness. So working in Newcastle Falcons, really impressive. So in the moment, put him in lots of different environments and different contexts, and I was just blown away how skillful he was and how effective he was. He would also talk. He would be quite meta, talk a lot about spiritually, and he would talk a lot about, team stuff. I thought he was way ahead of his time. He was so far ahead of his time that everybody thought he was just like a maniac and just kind of disregarded him a bit. Brian Ashton had a big influence. So just as I was starting to get reasonably serious about it, there was this guy who was going like, really questioning the norm, questioning order and structure and lots of other stuff around that. I enjoyed how he interacted with people, although probably reflecting back, some of it was quite blunt.
Very stubborn, Brian.
Yeah, he's like, but yeah, Brian had a big influence around it at a really important time, actually, because rugby league was coming into the game. Lots of Australian coaches were coming over. The Brumbies were doing well and they had a massive playbook. So it was actually quite a lot of influence, which was really challenging me a bit around some of the stuff that I was doing, which was just quite natural to me around creating game type stuff with the influence of Blackie. So Brian Ashton had a big one. I mean, Waltz would be, I've been around Waltz for a long time, but I do think Rusty, the dynamic of adding Rusty to our coaching team was really useful. And I have said this to Rusty before, our win ratio went down, but our experience went up like 10 times. So we probably lost one or two more games, but actually the quality of the experience and our growth as a management team was just huge. And just by adding Rusty into that and going, well, why do you do it like this? What about that? What are you thinking there? Type stuff. That was really helpful.
I'm going to give him a shout out, but Higgy's on here, and like one of my most favourite times for learning is the summer camp at Sedbergh. Like just getting to hang out with different coaches, different sports, co-coach, watch other people coach, especially when you get 3 days in and I'm surviving purely on sweets from the green door. The sugar is the only thing keeping me going. I've done 30,000 steps a day. My legs can barely move. And Higgy rocks up and the kids are like eating out of his hand. I'm like, what magic does this man have?
Sweet.
You know what I mean? So every time that would be my advice to everyone. Go and co-coach with different people. Go and do different sports. And looking at the list of people on here, I know loads of them are. That's where you grow. Like that's the nervous excitement of karaoke singing that we probably need to create more of, really.
Thank you very much indeed. I think on that note, that's a great way to finish, Jason, if you agree. There's loads. The question board's gone mad. I think Jason will make his way through it and see if he can direct any questions back to you in the next few days. But lads, thank you very much indeed. Fletch, Rusty, Jason, really, really good session. Enjoyed that. Thank you very much indeed.